Hello, a very Merry Christmas to everyone. My name's Matthew Dunstan and I'm a board game designer. And I'd like to thank very much Better Board Games for wanting to have me on as part of their Advent calendar this year. And today I'm your window, I guess. So for those who don't know me, I am an Australian board game designer. I've been designing for about 10 or 11 years now. My first game came out way back in 2013. And you might know me from games like Elysium by Space Cowboys, the Next Station London series, London, Tokyo, Paris, the Guild of Merchant Explorers, Monumental, Echoes, the Adventure Game series. A lot of different games that I've been able to do over the years. And I'm very fortunate now that I get to design games full time, which is sort of a dream come true. So I've been very fortunate that that's my life. And so as part of this Advent calendar, I'm going to talk about 3 games that are favorites of mine for different reasons. And yeah, hopefully you get something out of it. So the first is my first board game love. And so I played a lot of traditional games growing up. When I was very, very young, I played a lot of traditional card games like euchre. I remember playing with my grandmother, who was kind of going blind at the time. So she had to play with big cards that were almost up to her face. And I played chess when I was very young. And in Australia, we play a version almost of bridge, which is called 500, a trick-taking game. But in terms of sort of hobby board games, I would say my first real love, the first thing that I really got into was kind of when I came back to board games during university. I played a game, Race for the Galaxy by Tom Lehman, and it's had a lot of expansions since then. It's an engine building game at its heart where you are playing cards into your tableau, and cards represent either planets or technologies that you're able to use over the course of the game. And as it says in the title, the game is a race. It's effectively a race to either complete your tableau and have a certain number of cards in it, or to empty the victory point supply, and then you add up all your points and you see who wins. I think one of the really special and difficult things about the game is its iconography. It has a really different style of iconography. I remember playing it for at least the first 5 times, having absolutely no idea what I was really doing. It's almost like learning a new language, I guess. But the beauty of it is that, like a language, once you understand it, it's such an amazing shorthand to be able to get to all these different powers and play the game in a very quick and efficient way. And for me, that is by far my most favorite thing about Race for the Galaxy. The game flows so well. It is a race, not just in terms of the goal of the game, but in terms of how quickly it goes. And the favorite way I like to play it is 2 players. There's a special variant for how 2 players works that works really well. And you can play between 2 people who know what they're doing. You can play in like 10 minutes or something. And actually, one of my favorite memories of the game is later, and I've played it all through my board gaming life, my hobby life. I had a friend in the place I worked before I became a full-time designer, who also really liked Race to the Galaxy, and we actually would play like leagues. So in the game, you can choose start worlds, which is sort of how you start the game. And over the course of the game, there are 16 start worlds. Normally, you get dealt 2 and you choose one. And what we do is we would draft these start worlds at the start, like a fantasy league. So we would have each like 8 start worlds, and we would play 8 games, where each game we would choose one of our remaining start worlds and then play. And we would play the best of 8, like a World Series of baseball or something. And it was so much fun, and I still love it. It's an incredible achievement in terms of just how efficient and how just great flow it has, but so many different possibilities in the game. So many different things you can do or specialize in. Each game goes very differently. And that's the reason it was sort of my first hobby board game love. But I should say a shout out to 500, which if anyone out there knows 500, I think in Australia it's almost new. I would check it out. It's a fantastic game. My hottest board game love. Now, it was I think, looking at some previous Advent calendar entries, this is a somewhat contentious question maybe. How do you define the hottest board game love? What I did is I went to Board Game Geek. I started at the number 1 ranking, and I went down until I hit something which I was like, oh, that really gets me. And for me, that is Grand Austria Hotel by Virginio Gigi and Simone Luciani. It is a Euro-style game where you are running your own hotel in Austria. And what you have to do is you have to prepare the rooms. Different guests will come you have your hotel, which is a board. You're going to be preparing rooms by putting tiles out, which is sort of like the rooms ready to be occupied. And then guests in the form of cards will come to your hotel. You have to feed them the right amount of cake, coffee, wine, and strudel before they will go up to their room once they're happy. And different guests have to go in particular rooms, and there's different combinations. And much like all great Euro games, there are different scoring opportunities, the different sort of goals that you're trying to do in the game about kind of how you're filling up your hotel. The guests themselves all have special abilities, either when you take them or usually when you fulfill them. You also get to hire different hotel staff that are going to be working in your hotel that gives you like lots of rule-breaking special abilities. And that's the game, and it has a fantastic expansion as well, which introduces like a ballroom where you can send, instead of guests going to their room, they can go to dance instead. I guess they don't bother sleeping, they just dance the night away. The game, I love a lot of Euro games, these kind of point salad Euro games. I could have named probably quite a few things by Stefan in the same category, and I skipped over Castles of Burgundy. That is almost like a tie. But for me, what I love about the game is the variety. A bit like Race of the Galaxy, it's a bit of a common trend you'll see in my three games is I love games with lots of cards with different powers. And this has this sort of on two levels. The staff you employ, at least kind of like engine building, a little bit of engine building, not quite as much. You maybe will get between 2 or 5 cards a game that you'll be using, so not that many. But the guests themselves all have these crazy abilities, and you're trying to piece them all together. And there's the other thing about the game, it has an interesting. It's kind of like an economy, but you're trying to do things in a very specific order. It's like, I need to open up this room, and then I need to take a guest, and I need to get the food for the guest, and I need to put the guest in the room. And you're sort of completing this, but it's actually how do you mix these mixture of actions? Because oftentimes it's more efficient to take a lot of guests at once, or take a lot of food for multiple guests, or prepare many rooms at the same time. So it's how do you mix all these different opportunities that you're trying to do. And for me, it has a really special part, a bit like Race for the Galaxy, but for a different reason, in that during COVID, it's a tough time for a lot of people. We were quarantined in Prague for a long time, for many, many months. Like, I think the first quarantine was like 6 or 7 months or something like that. Not quarantine, where you had to stay at home. And me and my wife, we actually, it was a really special time for us. We got to kind of be at home. We weren't working, and we got to spend a lot of time together. And we played Grand Austria Hotel was like the most played game during that time. I think we played it at least 30 or 40 times during that lockdown. And so I think it is like etched in our minds as as like part of this, exceptional experience, as it was for everybody at the time. And in a small way, it kind of helped us get through it. A lot of the times we didn't even bother packing it up. We would just leave it on the table because we know we would play it again. So yeah, that's why it was really special. And the last game is my newest board game love. It's quite new. I've only played it in the last month. It's called Forest Shuffle. Now, this is actually not a new game. The game's been out for more than a year now, but I live in Australia now, and we don't get board games very quickly. In fact, I don't think it's even released in Australia yet, sadly, although I think very soon. So I'm back in Prague, and I've been able to play it. And I was waiting to play the game for so long because, again, it's a game where you're building a tableau of a forest with trees, and different animals and plants are going into those trees, and they have different scoring abilities and different abilities to take the cards, and you're trying to combine them in the best way. As I said, a common theme. And, when I saw the description, I saw the game being played, I sort of knew I would probably like it. It's not always the case that it doesn't always live up to my expectations, but in this case it definitely did. I played it a few times at a game club, and then I immediately went on to BGA and played a few games every day since. So absolutely fantastic game by Kosh, and a sort of a modern Race for the Galaxy in a way. It has a really great flow. It has a sort of a different idea, which I think this central row, this clearing where whenever you pay, a bit like Race of the Galaxy, when you're playing cards, you have to pay for them in other cards that you discard from your hand. But unlike Race of the Galaxy, these discarded cards go into this clearing. So actually you're giving them as opportunities for other players to draw them into their hand. And it's that kind of competition over these cards in the clearing. It's something You don't know until you play the game, but I think it's actually the most clever thing in the game. It produces such an interesting interaction, and that can sometimes be difficult in these games. It can feel very much like you're kind of doing your own thing. But actually, all three of the games I mentioned have really interesting interaction points. They manage to blend that engine building with really efficient, interesting, but not destructive interaction. And it's a fantastic game, and I really enjoy it. I would recommend checking it out too. Those are my three games. Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas, and thanks very much for having me on. And I'll catch you around. Bye.
Thank you so much, Matthew, for being part of our Advent calendar this year. Great choices for your games. I see you're coming around a lot and I'm really curious what your next station will be. Morgen um 8 Uhr geht's weiter mit dem nächsten Kalendertürchen und dem nächsten fantastischen Gast. Ich hoffe, ihr seid wieder mit dabei. Und wenn ihr einen der bisherigen Beiträge verpasst habt, dann findet ihr die hier auf der Seite verlinkt. Bis dann.